Our guest today has a new top Metra rail priority. It is a new rail line serving a number of rapidly growing major suburban communities not now served by rail. I have known our guest today for many years. In fact, our guest today gave me my first job, which helped pay my tuition at Marquette University. So I will always remember that. Thank you, Chairman Ladd. Our guest today is one of the finest public servants in our community. He is a partner in the distinguished law firm of Bell, Boyd, and Lloyd. In the early 1970s, he served in the historic Illinois Constitutional Convention, the Constitution we now live by. He won great praise, for example, from all of the then 4 daily Chicago newspapers, a rare event in itself, for his tireless efforts on behalf of good government and the modernized state constitution. Our guest today is the chairman of Metra, the rail commuter division of the Regional Transportation Authority. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the chairman of Metra, Jeff Ladd. Mr. Chairman, all yours. All yours.
It's always a pleasure to come here. It's good for your ego when Jay introduces you. It's a pleasure to be here for a lot of reasons. First of all, the club has a close place in my heart. Jay may not even know this, but one of the co-founders of the City Club many years ago was one of my former partners at Bell, Boyd, and Lloyd. I had the distinct privilege in 1994 of being honored by the club as its Man of the Year. And most importantly, Jay Doherty has been a very long friend. And on top of that, I have watched Jay get involved, and in spite of Tom Roser's magnetic personality, Jay was able to come in and re-energize this club. And today, I think it is no question that it is the primary forum in the city for discussion of important issues. And to that, I think all of us owe Jay a great debt of gratitude to bring this to the city. I'd also like to thank Tripti Patel for putting this together and making sure that all of this stuff is going to work today. Tom Miller has been working with her, and hopefully it is. I'm here today to discuss Metra's service plans for the beginning of this new millennium. First, let me give you a little history, because I'm not sure all of you would be familiar with it. The RTA in its present form came into being in 1983. That's when Metra was formed. At that point in time, and I want you to know that the freight volumes, rail freight in this region, which many of you may not know anything about, roughly a third of it originates in Chicago in the entire country. Roughly a third of the total volume in this country originates in Chicago. Roughly a third goes through Chicago, and roughly a third terminates here. Those numbers are huge. It's about an 8 to 10 billion contribution to our Illinois economy. Now, overlay all of this with a commuter rail network that runs the kind of on-time performance that we do. And you begin to see the complexity of the system. And thank God here in Illinois, we had rail freight operators that had experience with passenger service, because many of them, before Metra or the RTA came into existence, provided it, like the Burlington Northern or the Chicago Northwestern, Chicago Milwaukee, etc. And so we had a culture here that worked, and they have made it work. And so with all of this freight volume that we have in this region, Metra still runs the best on-time performance in the country. And that's a tribute not only to our Metra folks, but the people in the rail freight business. When we came into business in 1984, just so you know, The whole name of the game for us was capital. It still is, but how bad it was at those points in time. On the Rock Island, we were running slow orders. We were running 10 miles an hour in some sections of the track. There was virtually no welded rail in the system. Our first inspection of bridges showed 100 of them in critical condition. We've been slowly working through those, but some of them are checked monthly. We had signals were a problem. Very few little CTC throughout the central train signal throughout the entire region. We have added about 40,000 parking spaces since we've been in business, and we've replaced, or will have within the next 4 years, almost all of our rolling stock. It's just amazing how much support has come from the region and from the state of Illinois, and too often I don't think that gets said. We'd all like to have more money, but there has been great support in the state for it. Now let's talk, though, about our new Millennium Challenges. Metra today is poised to propel the state's transit network firmly, we believe, into the next century. The T3 agenda includes 2 new service lines, 3 major capacity and infrastructure projects that will improve service to nearly 75% of Metra's full customer base. Now, what can the region's commuter rail customers expect in the early years of this new century? More service, new service, and strategic structural improvements that will continue to solidify Illinois' position as the nation's premier transportation hub. Lofty aspirations, but let's not forget where we are. In a region that expects its transportation network to run seamlessly in good and bad weather, in 2 inches of snow or 2 feet of snow. We achieved a 97.5% reliability rating during the winter's first major snowstorm last week. And for those of you who sat in your cars, I hope you enjoyed a wonderful book on tape. I also hope you passed one of our billboards on those clogged expressways. In those kind of conditions, Metra really is the way to fly. At the beginning of this year, Metra's board announced our vision for the future. And again, it was ambitious. And it got more ambitious in the ensuing weeks, as I'm sure you may recall. We announced 3 infrastructure improvement projects that would upgrade the experience of nearly 60% of our customer base. And on January 30th, we gathered with 10 mayoral representatives to announce the new Star Line. It's a new 55-mile service line that firmly marks a new day for intersuburban transportation. And from those of you from the city of Chicago, you may not fully understand the problem in the suburbs. But if I drive 5 to 10 miles, I can get to a railroad station, and my only destination is downtown Chicago. For those of you in the city, you have a bus stop every 4 blocks. There is, at the moment, no alternative in the suburbs to the automobile if your destination is intersuburban. This is the start of providing an alternative to the automobile in the suburbs. Notice what happens here, ladies and gentlemen. We run from O'Hare Airport northwest up to Hoffman Estates, where we intersect with an already existing EJ&E railroad on which freights currently run, built around the turn of the century by U.S. Steel. It runs from Waukegan all the way around to the South Works, the old South Works in Indiana. It is, for Metra, the rim on the spokes, and it ties together 11 of our lines, or will ultimately. And what we attempted to do, as you know, under the auspices of the RTA, it has been looking for a solution to the traffic congestion in the Northwest Corridor. The CTA and PACE put in its proposals early in the fall. We were late in getting ours in. One of the reasons is we did a lot of study on what we've proposed. This is our proposal, not only to serve that corridor, but by going further than Schaumburg to Hoffman Estates, we can intersect with the EJ&E, and we run then from Hoffman Estates all the way down to the northwest corner of Joliet. There's over 100 communities in that corridor. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, about how significant it is, but it is the very first step in creating this suburban grid. Off this, we not only can extend the EJ&E north to Waukegan, but south or east over to the Indiana line. From it, we can run south down the Route 53 corridor, right through the guts of DuPage County, and we can also run a service from O'Hare Airport to Midway and then further south. That would create the basic 3 north-south runs intersecting our 11, radiating in and out of the city, and then we'd have a basic suburban grid off which you can run buses so people can get to and place their place of business with our system. Now, let's go back to the Southeast service. I'm sure everyone in this room remembers the call from Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. for more Metra service to the south suburbs. I know I do. Congressman Jackson clearly understands the value of Metra service and the importance of providing high-functioning, on-time transit projects. And I'm pleased to say that Metra today will pursue federal dollars for a new service line serving the southern suburbs. The 33-mile Southeast service line will feature 9 new Metra stations at Dalton, South Holland, Thornton, Glenwood, Chicago Heights, South Chicago Heights, Crete, and Balmoral Park for you who are race fans. Is it the right time in this state and federal economy to pursue such 2 new service lines and service enhancements? You better believe it is. Is all of this very ambitious? You better believe it is. But so is Metra. And we also have a Speaker of the House from the state of Illinois. So when we say make no small plans, the evolution of Chicago as a metropolitan center for business, culture, and transportation has developed only because so many heeded that philosophy. So Metra today asks that we make no small plans. Again, and the time for these improvements and these 2 new service lines is now. Frankly, it was yesterday. National forecasts continue to underscore the need for more service, the need to efficiently move goods, people, and services from one point to another. It is the predicate for our whole economy. If the transportation system doesn't work, business doesn't expand here, it doesn't move here, we don't have the tax revenues for the other things like housing, education, etc. So we need to curb the chronic congestion and the full-day rush. It's no longer a rush hour. A recent national study underscores the real consumer frustration and economic impact of roadway congestion in our area. Get this. Peak congestion hours in this region have risen from 4.5 hours in 1982 to 8 hours in 2002. This congestion costs the average motorist, yeah, that's you and me, $1,200 more a year in gas alone. Of course, as a member of the transportation community, I get very excited by the concept of firsts. And so establishing this first integrated intersuburban transportation network, or the beginning of it, is an exciting first for Illinois. As I said, it will connect nearly 100 communities and fill that critical void for the suburban alternative to the automobile. It lies within 5 miles of many of the region's fastest growing new housing developments, major hospitals, college and university campuses, large shopping malls, and major business headquarters, such as 3Com, BP, Fermilab, IKEA, Lucent Technologies, Motorola, Navistar, Nicor, Pfizer, SBC, Sears, Siemens, and Tel Labs. Big tickets. Introducing a fleet of trains that is 12 times more efficient is an exciting first for Illinois. A fleet that will continue to deliver on the environmental benefits of commuter rail. Introducing a new service line into the south suburbs is an exciting first in the history of our region. Metra will introduce 9 new stations, as I said, along the route, which will provide better access to existing jobs and attracting new business development in the area. And we will do everything we can to support Congressman Jackson and his leadership to get authorization and funding for this project. And while we make no small plans for new service, we cannot take our eyes off the fundamentals of our service. Let's take first the Union Pacific Northwest Line, which is one of our proposed projects. This is a $144 million project which will involve the relocation of 2 yards. An extension of the spur from Crystal Lake to McHenry will now go to Johnsburg. It will have new central train controls on a 3rd track, which we currently don't have, and a lot of other improvements which will allow us to have much better service here and add trains, etc., which we couldn't do at the moment. The population along this service line is projected to grow in the next 20 years dramatically. For instance, Cary Crystal Lake by as much as 56%, with other communities expected to more than double their current population. And on this line, currently 9.2 million annual passenger trips and 231 million plus miles, passenger miles, on this line annually. The job-based development in the city's downtown business district is projected to grow 28 and 41% until 2020. Through funding, Metra seeks to upgrade this service line and meet the future demand curve and get ahead of it. Signal enhancements will be initiated, and between 3 and 5 new trains will be added for the line. Now let's look at the Union Pacific West Line. Keep in mind, this is the main freight line for the Union Pacific. It is the heart and the soul of the Union Pacific line in terms of entry to Chicago. It has 3 tracks, but it doesn't have nearly the kind of flexibility that the Burlington Northern Santa Fe line has, and it has, the Union Pacific West Line, has the worst rating by our riders of any line we have. And we have, or almost at capacity on the Burlington Northern Santa Fe. One of the reasons for this upgrade is not only to improve the service, but to create capacity on the Burlington Northern, which is essential for us. So by improving this line and bringing its service up to BNSF standards, we'll get people to ride this line, creating additional capacity on BNSF. Through funding, we plan to create both greater flexibility to manage the freight congestion, as well as a growth in frequency and efficiency of commuter service on this line. Signal enhancements will be initiated, and between 7 and 9 new trains will be added for the line, including express service. The third component is the A2 interlocker, and it's certainly the least sexy. But it is critical. It is a choke point for us. Approximately 60% of our riders are affected by this one interlocker. And as you can see, its current location is in a very difficult place, adjacent almost to 2 yards. Oh, Mr. Green has a question?
What's an interlocker?
That's where we can cross trains and you throw switches and the rails through. Okay? If you want to get more technical, I got several engineers here that'll be happy to take you. You can see the juxtaposition at 2 yards as well as the Western Avenue station. This is such a terrible situation for us that we don't even use the yards for maintenance anymore. We send them to further yards further away just because we can get the service done and get them back into situations. We will, with this improvement, by moving this interlocker a mile east, be able to double the speed with which we travel through this area. And this affects all the trains that come in on the north end of the Union Station, including Amtrak, as well as all of the trains that come into the Ogilvie Transportation Center. So you can see the significance of it because they have to all go through this interlocker. This will help us improve dramatically our operations during severe weather, believe me. At least it better. This Metra is also engaged in an $80 million program to rebuild the Lake Street interlocker and add capacity to its north entry. We are courting local and federal dollars to implement these infrastructure improvements that address key bottlenecks and choke points. And Metra will work with a unified Illinois delegation to pursue funds under the Federal Transportation Reauthorization Bill for this broad program of new service and service enhancements. Now let's talk a little bit about the process, because I know some of you know about it, but all of you may not. The first thing that we have to do is we present information so that we get in a queue to be considered for authorization in the new 5-year federal program. Authorization comes from on the House side, the House Transportation Infrastructure Committee, in which Bill Lipinski is the ranking minority member. And as some of you may know, he's worked very closely with the Speaker on the Illinois agenda. The Speaker has something to say about the menu, obviously, but the chef in the kitchen has been Bill Lipinski. And day to day, he's the guy that's getting things together. So once you get through authorization, then you have another, some say even higher hurdle, and that is to get through the Appropriations Committee. And once you get through the Appropriations Committee, then we go to a federal agency and put up with that red tape, and that's where we need to have the local match. And keep in mind that Governor Blagojevich doesn't have a budget deficit of X. He has a budget deficit of X plus the local match that will be required by this state to leverage its resources to get the maximum dollars out of the Fed's new 5-year program. If we don't have the local match, we will not get those funds out of either the highway program or the mass transit part of the program. So the task is even more daunting than we've been told by some newspaper reporters. The reason that Metra, by the way, we have been extremely successful, I know some of you know that. One of the reasons we have been so successful at the federal process is, first of all, we've had good projects, and we have provided credible information. Our information has been right. We have not tried to snow anybody. That doesn't serve you very well for the long term. We have a strong reputation in the transit community for securing funding because we get it done on budget and on time. We have not had a project that went over budget or that went over the time period. And that gives us a record of accomplishment that will stand us in good stead as we move into the T3 process. And then we look to the leadership of the Illinois delegation. As this fine organization and its members continue to meet to discuss issues of vital importance to this region, I only hope you'll continue to invite the leaders of the transportation community to present their plans for growth. It is critical. And in spite of what you may hear from some people, on paper, none of this transportation organization makes any sense, but it works. Illinois does work. And in spite of what you hear from some columnists, we do go to Washington with a unified plan for funding. And that was what we did the last 5-year plan and the 5-year plan before that. That doesn't mean there isn't some constructive friction before the plan is finalized locally. But the point is we have gone to Washington unified, and we will continue to do that. In the end, we are a premier transportation hub, an integrated network of rail lines, grade crossings, tollway systems, side streets, bus lanes, elevated platforms, subway systems, and airports that literally comes to life every day. And we think we've got our gaze fixed firmly on the future. And that's our program, and I'd be delighted to answer any questions you may have.
The microphone's right there. Anyone wants to ask a question, just step up to the microphone, and I'm sure Mr. Ladd can answer any and all questions.
Well, that I may not be able to, but I will certainly try to.
You'll say something.
Hi, Joyce.
Saxon on the Board of Governors of the City of Chicago. Are we live? All right, I'll let you know. You mentioned the last 5-year plan. How much of that did we get when you last voted?
Well, we had an increase in total dollars, but we had a decrease in terms of the share that we got back from Washington. For instance, we got under the last 5-year program only 92 cents back for every dollar we sent in gas tax back to the federal government. And so we became a donor state, and that is the reason that some people are criticizing that program. In the new 5-year program, the Speaker and I think Bill Lipinski have both said that they would like to reverse that. As a fact, we are a state that should be donated to because we provide so much transportation that's essential to the entire country.
Mr. Ladd, my name is Andrew Hyman. I work for PricewaterhouseCoopers. I have 2 questions. One is, I think the star line is very innovative, but what are you doing to make sure that you have transit-oriented development in conjunction? Because if people can't get to work easily once they get there, I don't see them abandoning their cars, which does also relate to the fact that I don't think transit pass is interconnected at the moment between the different systems.
That's correct.
And also, I was wondering, in terms of economics, a lot of times American transit agencies, I believe, are restricted by these Buy America requirements. How do you find that they sort of affect your cost? And maybe when you have to, for example, when you're under Buy America, you might only get 2 train cars, where if you purchase them externally, you might be able to get 3. And let's face it, a lot of times in Europe or Asia, they do seem to have better rail car technology. And could we ever access them?
Well, let's try and take them in reverse order. First of all, you ought to know I don't have a rail car manufacturer in the United States anymore. We have some locomotive manufacturers, but Bombardier has a plant here, but that's a foreign company. The Buy American doesn't mean that we have to buy in America. It just means that a certain percentage of it's we can have here. So that's not been a problem for us. If we talk about the transit-oriented development, you should know that Metra put out the first publications on that for communities in the region. We're very much in favor of it, but you should also know that it is not nearly as critical to us as it would be for the CTA or PACE. Our passengers, our riders, many of them will drive 5 to 7 miles to get to the train station. Now that doesn't mean that transit-oriented development still isn't desirable. It is, and we will support it. And I think that the minute this was announced, we saw a lot of planners change the way that they were thinking about development in that whole corridor, and I think communities have as well. Joel? You're going to have to speak up. I guess that's dead.
You'll probably see that word interlocker now in trains used quite often. But my question is, you mentioned how, during the snow season, you're on Metra's flying by, and there's...
We knew he was good for something.
It's more technologically advanced, obviously. My question is, what is it, if you travel around this region of Chicago area, so many of the expressways are so clogged with cars, but yet you see your trains just flying by. What is it about rail transit that seems not to be able to really attract more riders?
Well, if we put anywhere near the same kind of resources into our transit system as we put into highways, we'd see a lot more people riding transit. I mean, the North Central line, which completed the last 5-year program, was the first new rail line in the region for 70 years. Now, I'm sure all of us can remember new roads that went in this region, but we just have not made the commitment to transit. And as far as I think anybody that's here knows, we are not going to work our way out of this congestion with more ribbons of concrete. And the public opinion is shifting immensely, in my opinion, and there is a great support out there for transit to look for an alternative to this automobile. Joyce O'Keefe.
I'm with Open Lands Project, and I wanted to ask what your response has been to the proposal made by Chicago Metropolis 2020 to at least study, if not do, a merger of actually what would be 7 planning agencies, as well as the actual operating agency that you are the head of at this moment.
Well, please, first of all, I want to say I'm ready to retire anytime anybody wants me to leave. I'm ready to go. Anybody other than the Southtown economist, but Joyce, I have great respect for the people of 2020, and I support the overall concepts with which they're dealing. But I am also a pragmatist because of basically who I am and the position I hold. And I cannot see spending a huge amount of political capital to remold and reshape something that's already working. Now, if I were going to start on a piece of paper, I'd never put it together the way we do now. I mean, you've got IDOT, and you've got CDOT, and you've got every county highway department, and cities, and then you've got the RTA, and Metra, and CTA, and PACE, and the tollway. None of it makes any sense on paper. But at the end, it all comes together, and the sausage gets made, so Illinois gets its share. And I'm sure Tom McCracken would agree with that.
Now, can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
In that context, and addressing the general question, though, can you suggest better ways for the agencies to cooperate? And I actually specifically would look at perhaps CTA, and I must say I'm a loyal writer of Metra and appreciate the good service on these cold days. That being said, though, is there something that you can suggest from your vantage point that would increase the internal cooperation?
Well, first of all, you should know that there is excellent cooperation on an operating level between these agencies or amongst these agencies. If we have a train that's down for whatever problem, it's a gas leak or a power line is down, CTA will provide the buses to get our people out of there. That goes on every day, and that is there. And so if people didn't know that, they should know that. We really do have excellent operating. Now, on the policy level, we have some different issues. CTA would like to take some of our money. We don't want that to happen, okay? And you probably can understand why. Now, we've had Cone running around talking about we need to have these systems with these transfer points. I'm all in favor of that, Joyce, but keep in mind, our systems are parallel. We run parallel. So we have tried to take the areas where we can get the biggest bang for our buck, Jefferson Park, Oak Park, Evanston, so on and so forth, and we have major transfer points there between the two systems. But to do things, for instance, like at Sox Park, I'm not against the White Sox, I'm a fan. But they play 80 games at home, okay? And it's 2 times during the day, people are going to use the system. What are we putting in that, making that huge capital investment for? So we really have to think this out about where do we get our biggest bang for the buck. Now we talk about a universal fare system. Yes, we should have a universal fare system. But keep in mind, Metra's system is based, we have a base fare to get on the system, and then there's an increment for every 5 miles. It's a distance-based fare system. Our expenses are based on the distance we carry you. The CTA has a flat fare system. You go from the far south side of Chicago to Howard Street in Evanston, it's $1.50. You can't make those two systems work. I'm not going to give up mine, and I don't think politically they can give theirs up.
My name is Michael Stavey. I'm an energy economist, and with the situation in the Middle East, I haven't heard anything about electrifying the Metra lines. You want to comment on that? Well,
because there's nowhere we'd get that anybody would take me seriously if I asked for the amount of money we would need to electrify this system. That's the reason. We'll go to new diesel equipment before we do that. The new DMUs we're talking about are 12 times more efficient than our current diesel units.
But you could get extra capacity from electricity, couldn't you?
Yes, we probably could get some extra capacity, but the investment would be enormous, and we'd have to close all the systems too. I mean,
No, you wouldn't, but you've answered my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Kirk Hartley. What do you see coming for the southwest side in terms of trying to coordinate yourselves with the freights and improve service down that way, and then perhaps bring the E and J over to the east? What kind of time frames do you foresee to improve service that way?
Well, just so you know, these programs, I think by design, are spread out over a lot of years, because that way the federal government can fund more programs even though they take forever to get done. But for the first year, for these new lines we're talking about, we'll only get the planning money. So in the first 5-year program, we'll get the design, engineering money, so on and so forth. Hopefully we'll get the construction money in the second 5 years. So in the second 5 years, maybe we'll look to an expansion of what we're looking for, and then the following 5 years we would get some construction money. So you wouldn't be looking for any extension that would be in service for sooner than 15 years from now. That's the lead time, all this stuff. It's incredible. Mayor, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Thank you for being here and informing us the way you have today. I would like to say that Congressman Lipinski has that thought of trying to bring these other people in the transit business together so that they can work together, because it is difficult to cross over into different groups like we have today. So he is thinking in that direction, so I think that's a good point.
Oh, no question. He's providing a lot of leadership. But let me also tell you that there's reason for optimism, because for years, these private railroads wouldn't talk to each other about these kinds of problems. Today, under the auspices of Metra, they are meeting now in our centralized control facility. They meet on a regular basis. Some even have permanent offices there. We had Congressman Young in last year, I believe. He met with the group. He was amazed at the amount of cooperation that they are exhibiting so far in terms of talking about solving mutual problems. Remember, the issue isn't everybody will agree there's congestion. Everybody will agree there's something we have to do about it. The question is, who gets theirs first? That's always the big issue. The devil is in the details. But they're coming a long way to getting that done, and Bill Lipinski is trying to find a way to provide some capital to help them get it done, for the simple reason that you have more congestion in terms of freight rail yards on the southwest side of Chicago than any place in the country. And that impacts our service as well, so we need to get that done.
Hi, thank you. Very interesting talk. I'm also a loyal Metra rider at the Northwest Line. And I'm generally satisfied. It looks like you're going to make things even better. I've always been curious about something. Anyone who's used commuter rail systems in other countries and around the world, and I've had experience in Amsterdam, London, Tokyo, knows that those places really know how to do it. And I've always been curious whether Metra looks to those kinds of other cities as examples to strive for. Do you benchmark against?
We don't, and one of the reasons is we have regulations in this country that are put out by FRA and the Federal Transit Administration that they do not have in Europe. They could never do what they're doing if we had those regulations in existence. But the point is well taken. It was only last month I said to Rick Tedwell, who's our Associate Executive Director at Metra for Operations, I said, Rick, we've got to go see. And I don't think Europe necessarily is the place to go, but what they have done in India, what they've done in South America, what they've done in Japan, I think is something to see, and we ought to go, and I'll probably get hit for a boondoggle on that, but that's the reason we go.
I can tell you that Japan is really impressive. It's astonishing what they've done.
I'm not sure that our commuters will take the pushers, but we'll try. Well, if there's nothing else, I first of all want to say how much I appreciate Paul Green's forbearance. He had a lot of things he could have told you about me today, and he didn't do it. And Paul, if you just hold true for another 5 minutes, I would like to say thank you.
Here is a coffee mug from the city. How many of these you have already?
Thank you.
A lot. And a membership. You're a member, aren't you?
I am a member.
But you can put this in your office and now show it with pride, and you can leave the other one in the vault. And on behalf of the City Club, we want to thank you very much. And he did a damn good job. Adjourn.